I'm recording this because I don't know how much time I have left. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm 28 years old, and I live in Brooklyn. Or at least I used to. Right now, I'm not sure who's living in my body anymore. 3 weeks ago, I bought an antique mirror from an estate sale. Beautiful thing, gold frame, Victorian era, roses carved into the corners. $20. The woman selling it looked relieved when I took it, like she'd been waiting for someone stupid enough to buy it. I should have asked why it was so cheap. I should have asked a lot of things, but I didn't. And now, every time I look in that mirror, I see someone else staring back at me. Not my reflection. Someone else. A woman with my face, but different eyes. Darker eyes. Hungry eyes. She's been getting stronger every day. Yesterday, I woke up standing in front of the mirror with my hand pressed against the glass, and I don't remember getting out of bed. This morning, I found scratches on my arms that I didn't make. And an hour ago, I watched my reflection smile at me while my own face stayed frozen in terror. She's trying to take my place. She's trying to take my body, my life, everything. And the worst part? I think she's winning. If you're watching this and you ever see a mirror like mine at an estate sale, run. Don't ask questions. Don't think about it. Just run. Because once you bring it home, it's already too late. Let me start from the beginning. 3 weeks ago, I was living a pretty normal life. Freelance graphic designer, tiny apartment in Brooklyn. Too much coffee and not enough sleep. The usual millennial struggle. My best friend Claire had been bugging me to decorate my place, make it feel more like home instead of a storage unit with a bed. So when I saw the flyer for the Hillcrest estate sale, I figured why not? I love antiques. There's something about old things, you know? They have history, character, all the things my IKEA furniture was missing. The Hillcrest estate was this massive Victorian mansion on the edge of town. The kind of place that looks beautiful during the day but absolutely terrifying at night. Gothic architecture, iron gates, overgrown garden. I'd driven past it 100 times and always wondered who lived there. Turns out, nobody had lived there for decades. The last owner died 6 months ago with no living relatives, so everything had to go. The sale was packed. Families picking through furniture, antique dealers eyeing the valuable stuff, college kids looking for cheap decorations. I wandered through room after room, running my hands over dusty books and tarnished silverware. Then I walked into the master bedroom, and I saw it. The mirror. It was propped against the far wall, almost as tall as me, with this gorgeous ornate gold frame. The glass was perfect, not a single crack or scratch despite being over a century old. The roses carved into the frame were so detailed I could see individual petals and thorns. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. I walked toward it like I was in a trance. When I stood in front of it, my reflection looked different somehow. Better. My hair looked shinier, my skin looked clearer, my eyes looked brighter. It was like looking at the version of myself I'd always wanted to be. A woman was sitting behind a card table in the corner, barely paying attention to the sale. She was scrolling through her phone, looking bored. I pointed at the mirror. How much for that? She glanced up, saw what I was pointing at, and her expression changed. Just for a second, I saw something flash across her face. Fear. Relief. I couldn't tell. $20, she said quickly. Cash only. No returns. $20 for something that had to be worth thousands. I should have been suspicious. Instead, I was thrilled. I pulled out my wallet and handed over a $20 bill before she could change her mind. Do you know anything about it? I asked as I stuffed the receipt in my pocket. Like, where it came from or how old it is. She shook her head without looking up from her phone. Just that it belonged to the original owner. Been in the family since the house was built in 1898. 1898. So it was even older than I thought. I couldn't believe my luck. Getting the mirror home was a nightmare. I had to bribe my neighbor Marcus with pizza to help me carry it up 3 flights of stairs. The thing weighed a ton, like it was made of solid gold instead of just gold paint. We were both sweating by the time we propped it against my bedroom wall, directly across from my bed. Marcus stood back, hands on his hips, staring at it. "That's one creepy mirror," he said, wiping his forehead with his shirt. I laughed. "It's not creepy, it's vintage." "It's creepy," he repeated. "You sure you want that thing watching you sleep?" "It's just a mirror, Marcus. It can't watch anything." He shrugged, grabbed his pizza, and left. I stood alone in my bedroom, admiring my new purchase. The mirror made my tiny room look twice as big. In the reflection, I could see my unmade bed, my overflowing laundry basket, my desk covered in sketches and coffee mugs, and me, standing in the center of it all, looking small and ordinary. I smiled at my reflection. It smiled back. Nothing weird. Nothing unusual. Just a regular mirror. That night, I fell asleep feeling proud of myself. I'd found an amazing antique for almost nothing. I'd successfully adult. Everything was great. Around 3 a.m., I woke up to a scratching sound. Slow, deliberate scratching, like fingernails on glass. I lay in bed, listening, trying to figure out where it was coming from. The walls. The window. Then I realized it was coming from the mirror. I turned my head and looked at it in the darkness. Just my room, reflected back at me. Everything looked normal. The scratching stopped. "Old buildings make weird noises," I muttered to myself. "You're fine. Go back to sleep." I pulled the covers over my head and eventually drifted off. But I had strange dreams that night. Dreams of a woman in a white nightgown, standing in front of the mirror, crying. Dreams of blood on vintage wallpaper. Dreams of hands pressing against glass, trying to break through. When I woke up the next morning, I'd forgotten all about them. The first few days were normal. I went to work, met Claire for coffee, binged Netflix shows I'd already seen 3 times. The mirror was just furniture, a nice decoration that made my room look bigger and fancier. I'd catch myself admiring it sometimes, thinking about what a great deal I'd gotten. Then, on day 3, I noticed something odd. I was getting ready for work, standing in front of the mirror applying mascara, when I blinked. My reflection blinked too, but not at exactly the same moment. It was maybe half a second late, like there was a delay, like watching a video call with bad internet connection. I stopped, mascara wand frozen in mid-air, and stared at my reflection. I blinked again deliberately. This time it was synchronized. Perfectly normal. "You need more sleep," I told myself, "and less coffee." But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I leaned closer to the mirror, studying my reflection's face. Everything looked normal. Same brown eyes, same freckles across my nose, same small scar on my chin from when I fell off my bike in 3rd grade. But the eyes looked different somehow. Darker, more hollow, like I was looking at a photograph of myself instead of an actual reflection. I shook my head and finished getting ready. I was being paranoid. Mirrors don't have delays. That's not how mirrors work. That afternoon, I had a video call with a client. As we talked, I noticed my reflection in the mirror behind my desk. It was moving normally, gesturing when I gestured, talking when I talked. Everything was fine. Except when I stopped talking to listen to the client. My reflection's mouth kept moving for just a second longer, like it was finishing a sentence I hadn't said out loud. I ended the call early, claiming I had another meeting. Then I sat at my desk, staring at the mirror, my heart pounding. "Hello," I said quietly. My reflection's mouth moved at the exact same time. Normal. "Is someone there?" Again, perfectly synchronized. I felt ridiculous. I was talking to a mirror like it was a person. Mirrors don't have delays or lag time or whatever I thought I'd seen. It was just my imagination, combined with too much work stress and not enough sleep. That night, I ordered Thai food and watched a comedy special, trying to forget about the weird mirror thing. But when I got ready for bed and stood in front of the mirror to take off my makeup, I froze. My reflection was wearing different clothes. I was wearing an old t-shirt and pajama pants. My reflection was wearing a white nightgown, an old-fashioned one, with lace at the collar and long sleeves, the kind of thing women wore in the 1920s. I looked down at myself. T-shirt and pajama pants. Looked back up. White nightgown. I reached out slowly and touched the mirror's surface. Ice cold, even though my apartment was stuffy and warm. My reflection reached back, and our hands met on the glass. But her hand looked different. Paler, thinner, with longer fingers and nails. Not my hand. "What the hell?" I whispered. The reflection tilted her head, studying me. Her expression was curious, almost amused, like she found my fear entertaining. Then she smiled. Not my smile. The corners of her mouth turned up too sharply, too wide, like someone who'd forgotten how to smile naturally and was just imitating what they thought a smile should look like. Her eyes stayed cold and empty. I stumbled backward, knocking into my nightstand. My lamp fell over with a crash. When I looked back at the mirror, I saw my own reflection again. T-shirt, pajama pants, terrified expression. Normal. I grabbed a bedsheet and threw it over the mirror, covering it completely. Then I crawled into bed, pulled the covers over my head, and tried to convince myself I'd imagined the whole thing. Stress hallucination. That was a thing, right? People saw things when they were stressed. I'd been working too much, sleeping too little. My brain was just playing tricks on me. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. Something was wrong with that mirror. Something had been wrong with it from the beginning. I kept the sheet over it for the next 2 days. If I couldn't see the mirror, I could pretend everything was fine. I avoided looking at it, avoided even thinking about it. I told Claire I was busy with work when she invited me out. I ordered all my meals as delivery. I barely left my apartment. On the third night, I woke up at 3:17 a.m. with an overwhelming urge to look at the mirror. It was like something was pulling me toward it, dragging me out of bed even though I wanted to stay under the covers. I walked across the room like a sleepwalker. The sheet had fallen off. Or maybe I'd pulled it off. I don't remember. She was there, standing in the reflection, even though I was still near my bed. The woman in the white nightgown. She had long dark hair that fell past her shoulders, pale skin, delicate features. She looked about my age, late 20s maybe, and she was waving at me. Slow, deliberate waves, like she was greeting an old friend. I wasn't moving. I was frozen near my bed, one hand clutching the bedpost for support. But she was in the mirror, waving, smiling that horrible wrong smile. Then she pressed both palms against the glass from her side and mouthed 3 words. I couldn't hear her voice, but I could read her lips. "Let me out," I screamed. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight, flooding the room with bright white light. When I looked back at the mirror, I just saw my own terrified reflection staring back at me. Alone. Normal. Just me. But my hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. I left all the lights on and didn't sleep for the rest of the night. When Claire came over the next morning with coffee and bagels, I must have looked like death. She took one look at me and her eyes went wide. "Jesus. Sarah, when's the last time you slept?" "The mirror," I said, my voice hoarse. "There's something wrong with the mirror." I told her everything. The delayed blink, the different clothes, the woman in white, the waving, all of it. As I talked, I watched her expression change from concern to skepticism to something that looked like pity. "Sarah," she said carefully, like she was talking to a child, "you've been under a lot of stress. The freelance stuff, money problems, your breakup with Josh. This has nothing to do with Josh." I snapped. "There's a woman in that mirror, Claire. She's trying to get out. Mirrors don't work like that. You know that, right?" She reached out and squeezed my hand. I think you need to see someone. A therapist, maybe. Or at least a doctor. When's the last time you had a checkup? I pulled my hand away. I'm not crazy. I didn't say you were crazy. I said you're stressed, and stress can make us see things that aren't. Look at it, I interrupted. Just look at the mirror. Please. She sighed but walked over to the mirror. I watched her study it, her reflection perfectly normal, perfectly synchronized. It's a nice mirror, she said. Pretty frame. But Sarah, it's just a mirror. There's nothing. She stopped mid-sentence. Her face went pale. What? I jumped up from the bed. What did you see? For just a second, she whispered. I thought I saw. But no, that's impossible. What did you see? 2 reflections, she said slowly. You and someone else. Standing side by side. But when I blinked, it was just you. Finally, someone else had seen it. We need to get rid of it, I said. Today. Right now. Help me move it. But when we tried to lift the mirror, Claire's phone rang. Family emergency. Her mom had fallen and was in the hospital. She had to leave immediately. I'll come back, she promised. Tomorrow, we'll get rid of it together. In the meantime, just don't look at it, okay? Keep it covered. But after she left, I couldn't help myself. I pulled off the sheet and stared at my reflection. Who are you? I asked. What do you want? For a moment, nothing happened. Then my reflection's hand moved independently, pointing at me, at my body. She wanted to take my place. That's when I decided to do some research. I opened my laptop and started Googling. Antique mirror showing different reflection. Mirror showing someone else. Haunted mirror Hillcrest Estate. That last search gave me results. Lots of results. News articles, historical society records, even a Wikipedia page. The Hillcrest Estate had belonged to the Whitmore family since it was built in 1898. They were one of the wealthiest families in the area. Old money, society connections, all of that. The house passed through 3 generations without incident. Then, in 1924, tragedy struck. Elizabeth Whitmore, the youngest daughter of the family, was found dead in the master bedroom. She was 27 years old. The newspaper articles described the scene in graphic detail. Elizabeth had been standing in front of her bedroom mirror when someone cut her throat. They found her collapsed on the floor, blood everywhere, her eyes still open and staring at her own reflection. The murder was never solved. Police investigated for 6 months, questioned dozens of people, but never found the killer. The case eventually went cold. The Whitmore family sold most of their possessions and moved out of the estate within a year. Too many bad memories. I found a photograph of Elizabeth from the Historical Society website. Black and white, slightly grainy, but clear enough. A young woman with long dark hair and delicate features, wearing a high-necked white dress, staring seriously at the camera. My heart stopped. It was her. The woman in the mirror. Elizabeth Whitmore had died in front of that mirror. And now she was trapped inside it. Or maybe not trapped. Maybe she'd stayed there on purpose, waiting. Waiting for someone to buy the mirror, bring it home, give her a chance to escape. A chance to live again. In someone else's body. That night, things got worse. I fell asleep around midnight, exhausted from hours of research. When I woke up, I was standing in front of the mirror with no memory of getting out of bed. My hand was pressed flat against the glass, and on the other side, Elizabeth's hand was pressed against mine. She was smiling. I tried to pull my hand away, but I couldn't move. It was like my body wasn't responding to my brain anymore, like someone else was controlling it. No, I whispered. Please, no. Elizabeth's lips moved. I still couldn't hear her voice, but I could read her lips again. Thank you, she mouthed. Thank you for bringing me home. Then I felt it. A pressure in my head, like someone was pushing their way inside my skull. Memories that weren't mine flashed through my mind. An engagement party in 1924. A secret meeting in a garden. A confrontation in a bedroom. A knife. Blood. So much blood. I was seeing Elizabeth's memories. Her life. Her death. And she was seeing mine. She was learning everything about me. My PIN numbers, my passwords, my friends' names, my daily routines. Everything she'd need to know to take my place. Get out! I screamed, finally breaking free. I stumbled backward, gasping. Get out of my head. Elizabeth's reflection smiled wider. She was getting stronger. I didn't sleep after that. Couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt Elizabeth pushing against my consciousness, trying to force her way in. I started losing time. I'd be sitting at my desk and suddenly realize an hour had passed with no memory of what I'd been doing. I'd find myself standing in front of the mirror, my hand reaching toward the glass, with no recollection of walking over there. Once, I came back to myself in the bathroom with a pair of scissors in my hand, my hair half cut. Elizabeth was trying to change my appearance to match hers. I called Claire in a panic, and this time she came over immediately. She found me huddled in the corner of my bedroom, as far from the mirror as I could get, shaking uncontrollably. I'm going to call 911, she said, pulling out her phone. No. I grabbed her arm. They'll think I'm crazy. They'll put me in a psychiatric hospital, and she'll take over completely while I'm gone. We have to solve this ourselves. Solve what? Sarah, you need professional help. This is beyond. She was murdered, I interrupted. Elizabeth Whitmore. Someone killed her in front of that mirror in 1924. That's why she's trapped. We have to solve her murder. Maybe then she'll leave me alone. Claire looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. But what choice did we have? For the next 2 days, Claire and I became amateur detectives. We dug through old newspaper archives at the library, requested police reports from the Historical Society, interviewed elderly people who remembered stories about the Whitmore family. The picture that emerged was tragic. Elizabeth Whitmore had been engaged to Thomas Brennan, a wealthy banker chosen by her parents. On paper, it was a perfect match. Two wealthy families joining together, ensuring everyone's financial security. But Elizabeth didn't love Thomas. She was in love with someone else. Catherine Mills, her childhood best friend. In 1924, that kind of love could destroy your entire life. Women couldn't love women, not openly. It was considered a mental illness, a sin, something that needed to be cured or hidden. Elizabeth and Catherine had been conducting a secret relationship for years, meeting in hidden places, writing coded letters. They'd planned to run away together the night before Elizabeth's wedding. But someone found out. We found the evidence buried in old letters at the Historical Society. Thomas Brennan had discovered Elizabeth's relationship with Catherine. He'd confronted Elizabeth in her bedroom the night before the wedding, demanded she end things with Catherine and go through with the marriage. Elizabeth had refused, and Thomas had killed her for it. He'd made it look like a robbery gone wrong, but he'd killed her right in front of her beloved mirror. The mirror where she'd spent hours preparing to be the perfect society bride while her heart belonged to someone else. Thomas had gotten away with it. He'd lived a long, prosperous life, married someone else, had children and grandchildren. He died peacefully in his sleep in 1956, never paying for what he'd done. We found the truth, Claire said as we left the Historical Society. Now what? We can't exactly arrest a dead man, but I had an idea. That night, I stood in front of the mirror and spoke directly to Elizabeth's reflection. I know what happened to you, I said. I know Thomas Brennan killed you. I know you loved Catherine. And I know you've been trapped here for 100 years, unable to move on because your murder was never solved. Elizabeth's reflection stared back at me, waiting. But taking my body won't fix anything. You'll just be stealing someone else's life, the same way Thomas stole yours. That's not justice. That's just more tragedy. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Elizabeth's reflection began to cry, silent tears streaming down her face. She pressed her palm against the glass, not reaching for me, but just touching it gently, like she was trapped behind a window she could never break. "I'm going to tell your story," I said. "I'm going to write about what happened to you, publish it online, make sure everyone knows the truth. Thomas Brennan will be remembered as a murderer. Elizabeth Whitmore will be remembered as a victim who deserved justice. And Catherine Mills will be remembered as the woman you loved." I spent the rest of the night writing. Every detail we'd uncovered, every piece of evidence, every moment of Elizabeth's tragic story. I published it on Medium, shared it on Twitter, sent it to historical societies and LGBTQ+ archives. By morning, it had been shared thousands of times. Elizabeth Whitmore's story was finally being told. When the sun came up, I looked at the mirror one last time. Elizabeth was still there, but she looked different. Peaceful. She mouthed 2 words. "Thank you." Then her image began to fade. Not disappearing, but becoming translucent, like she was finally able to let go. Behind her, another figure appeared in the reflection. A second woman, with light hair and a gentle smile. Catherine. She reached out her hand, and Elizabeth took it. They looked at each other with so much love it made my chest ache. Then, together, they faded into light. The mirror was just a mirror again. I sold it the next day to an antique dealer who specialized in Victorian furniture. I told him the whole story, the haunting, the possession attempts, everything. He laughed and said ghost stories increased the value. People loved buying haunted antiques. I don't know if Elizabeth's spirit is really gone or if she's still in that mirror, just quiet now. I don't know if telling her story was enough to set her free. But I do know this. I never saw her reflection again. I moved out of that apartment 2 weeks later. Couldn't stand being in that room anymore, even with the mirror gone. Every time I looked at the empty spot where it used to stand, I remembered Elizabeth's face, her desperate attempts to escape, her tears. Sometimes, late at night, I still feel a presence. Nothing scary, just a gentle awareness, like someone checking in on me, making sure I'm okay, making sure the woman who told her story is safe. I like to think it's Elizabeth and Catherine, finally together, finally free, just wanting to say thank you. I don't buy antiques anymore, and I definitely don't buy mirrors. But I did start a blog about unsolved historical crimes, focusing on marginalized victims whose stories were erased or forgotten. Women like Elizabeth, who loved who they loved and paid the ultimate price for it. It's my way of making sure what happened to her never gets forgotten again. If you ever see an ornate mirror at an estate sale, with roses carved in the frame and glass that's just a little too perfect, think twice before buying it. Some reflections aren't meant to be yours. And some spirits are just looking for someone to tell their story. I was lucky. I survived. But the next person might not be so fortunate. So please, if you see that mirror, walk away. Because once you bring it home, once you hang it on your wall and see that first strange reflection, it might already be too late. The woman in the mirror won't give up easily. And by the time you realize what's happening, she might already be living your life while you're trapped on the other side of the glass, pressing your palms against it, begging someone, anyone, to let you out.